Commissioner Mullis joining us by phone. He's on vacation today. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, John. Welcome to the August 24, 2011 PDC Board of Commissioners meeting. Tracy, please call the roll.
Commissioner Dixon?
Here.
Commissioner Mullis?
Here.
Commissioner Strauss?
Here.
Commissioner Wilhoit?
Here.
Chair Andrews?
Here. Got an echo today. First item is the meeting minutes for June 22nd. Does anybody have any changes or additions? They were quite complete.
They were. I move that they be approved.
I second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Before I turn it over to Executive Director Quinton, I would make a couple of comments. First of all, the mayor and I did send out an opportunity for developers and tenants to show some interest in the Centennial Mills project. The deadline for that is Friday, excuse me, of this week, although it's not a hard deadline by any stretch of the imagination. We have had a couple of people call and show interest and ask for information, but we wanted to make sure that everyone had the opportunity to participate. Over the last month, I've had an opportunity to do several events. I had a very nice lunch with Art DeMuro from the Historic Landmarks Commission and hosted a outdoor and athletic event with leaders of the most sustainable folks in that industry here, along with the President's Council of Economic Quality chair. It was very, very well attended and was really a good event. Terrific. Patrick?
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Andrews and Commissioners. Have a fairly extensive update. With the board meetings once a month, a lot happens between our meetings. I think the first thing I want to announce or highlight is, as you know, we have a recently adopted neighborhood economic development strategy within PDC. Our neighborhood division is primarily responsible for the implementation of that strategy, and we have been conducting a search for the person to run that division. The last person in that role has retired and left PDC. And after a long search, as sometimes is the case, we found the best candidate internally, and so we have asked John Jackley to serve as the neighborhood division manager. John has served as our director of business and social equity, has established quite a reputation for that role, and we think that role lends itself quite well to taking over our neighborhood strategy. So he will actually take both roles and combine them into one, and he's already started in the job, and we look forward to him getting the strategy up and running. The second one is I just want to highlight again, and I know Commissioner Dixon was also part of this grand opening, but I did have the opportunity to speak at the opening of the June Key Delta Community Center. It's an extraordinary project. We've talked about it quite a bit. I encourage anyone who's in the neighborhood there to check that project out. But I just want to highlight, as I did that night, the work of PDC staff on that. Obviously, there's a lot of folks involved, particularly within the Delta sorority. But the PDC did play a significant role, and Becky Marsh, who underwrites most of our commercial property redevelopment loans, played a big role in underwriting and closing that loan. And then Susan Kuhn was our project manager from our neighborhood team on that. And I think projects like this really almost become kind of personal. People take a personal pride in making sure that it gets done right. So I just want to congratulate them on that great work and once again on a great project. The next thing we'll talk about, we have a few open RFPs in addition to the Centennial Mills, which is not really an RFP. It's more of an open solicitation for interest on that project. We do have some official RFPs. The first one is our Small Business Development Program RFP, which closes on September 1st. that is one of the major actions of our neighborhood economic development strategy. We have $500,000 to put to work in organizations that provide assistance to small businesses, particularly neighborhood small businesses. And so we've asked those organizations to apply for that money and propose how they would provide assistance to small businesses and fill gaps in the services that are available. So we're quite excited about that process because we believe we'll be able to fill out the spectrum of services for small businesses through that process. So that closes next week, and then the next one is an RFP for what we call the Green Innovation Park. The Green Innovation Park it's actually a location that will be a showcase for innovative residential and commercial buildings. We are seeking proposals for organizations to develop a business plan for this park, which will then recruit local, regional, international firms to build cutting-edge showcase buildings on those sites. We actually have two sites. One is in Lentz and one is in Interstate where this park will end up. That RFP closes out on September 9th. On the business development front, just want to highlight a few things. First off, one of our partners in working with small businesses, the Alliance of Portland Neighborhood Business Associations, has changed its name. It's now called Venture Portland, and that reflects their new, not a new mission, but I think they're trying to rebrand how they work with their members, which are primarily neighborhood small businesses, but they also represent some of the industrial neighborhood associations. And like I said, we consider them to be a very significant partner of ours, particularly on the neighborhood business development front. A number of our local businesses, particularly on the technology side, have had significant success over the past month. Just even today's paper was announced that Bank Simple, a software startup that had some operations here in Portland but was headquartered in New York City, is moving all of its people to Portland and views Portland to be the place to grow its business. It is part, as the article points out, I think quite accurately, it's part of a growing trend of software companies that believe that Portland is the place to grow their businesses. And along those same lines, there's been just in August alone, there's been a significant flow of venture capital into local companies. Close to $100 million of venture capital has been announced. In 1 week alone, we had a number of small startups that I think announced a total of $24 million. I think that was 2 weeks ago. And then just I think yesterday or the end of last week, we had ClearEdge, which is a fuel cell manufacturer, announced, I think, another $73 or $74 million of new venture capital. This is truly, I bring this up just because it's almost unprecedented, and it really does reflect a ton of momentum around the work that's happening in this local economy. And then just to follow on to Chair Andrews' comments about the Council on Environmental Quality, the chair of that body was in town and also convened a group to talk about renewable energy. So I was able to participate in that roundtable discussion with the leaders of the renewable energy community here in Portland. It was hosted by Iberdrola. It included companies like Iberdrola, Investis, and others, as well as all of our utilities. And we were able to talk about all the great things that are going on here in the Portland region, but also communicate to her the issues that we have across a variety of sectors within renewable energy and that are really federal issues, whether they're siting of wind turbines or the permitting on wind turbines or just the lack of a national energy policy and the uncertainty that causes for our private sector partners. So once again, I think that was a very fruitful conversation. And then lastly, yesterday I had the chance to join in on a meeting with a delegation from Suzhou, China. Suzhou is the sister city for Portland. They were here learning about all the great things that we do. We obviously are always trying to learn about what they do. And for me, this was a nice precursor to a trip to Asia, which I'll be attending. The Governor's Trade Mission is the second and third week of September, and I'll be participating in that, and we'll be traveling to Japan and China, both to continue our relationships with companies there that have investments in the Portland region, but also to seek out new investment opportunities, new investors in the companies we have here and the projects we have here, as well as companies that may want to locate here. So greatly looking forward to that, and I'll be able to report back on that trip at our next board meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Busy summer.
Yeah.
Start with you, Charles.
No, I don't have anything specific to report. Thanks.
Aneshka?
I just wanted to say that congratulations to John Jack Lee for being the new selected director for the Neighborhood Economic Development Strategy, and looking forward to assisting as much as I can through that really important mission of the Portland Development. And also wanted to give a special thanks to Patrick Quinton, who I thought did a superb job at his presentation for the grand opening of the June Key Delta project, and really making sure that people within the neighborhoods get a good understanding of what neighborhood economic development is all about, and that being a prime example of what that does to neighborhoods. So thank you for that and all the work that you're doing ahead. And that's all for today. Thanks.
John, anything for today?
No, I'm fine, thank you, Zach.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm
Thanks.
going to mute out while I'm not talking. I think that's where the echo's coming from.
All right. Next item is public comments for items not on the agenda. Before we do that, I'm going to point out we have had to change the agenda today, and we'll be moving things around a bit. After the consent agenda, actually we'll be adjourning the PDC board and convening the local contract review board. And the last item will be authorizing the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. That's to match some of the commissioner schedules today. So I do have Tommy Huang, who wants to morning.
Morning. First of all, thank you for your time. My name is Tommy Huynh. I just started the coffee house in Old Town, Chinatown, a couple years ago. It's going to be turning to September 9th. I work with the Old Town, Chinatown Neighborhood Association, part of the Art and Culture Historic Committee. And my question for the board today is related to Block 33 development project. The city was going to put a plan to work with developer to build Awajimaya for that location, and it's been ongoing. And I was wondering whether the city or the developer is going to step forward and continue the project. If not, what would be some of the alternative plan the city thinks about for Old Town, Chinatown neighborhood? So, yeah.
Sure. I'd be happy to respond because I've been personally working on this project. And actually, it's been a high priority for the commission and the mayor's office for some period of time. Over the last 6 months, I think we've met even with the mayor personally, with the developer, at least 3 times, trying to find a way to make the project work. Unfortunately, at this point, Awajimaya themselves have decided that the current economic climate and their business environment in 2 of their stores in Washington is such that they just don't see this as the time to make an investment and to invest also the management time in terms of starting a new store. So although I hear the developer is still working on it, it does not look likely that the project as it was envisioned will go forward. At this point, we have not earmarked the money for any other project. We're still looking at opportunities. David Gold, as you well know, owns the block. He still has aspirations for a project that would provide a critical mass to move the neighborhood forward, but there is no real news to report at this point.
Okay. So if so, besides that, anybody who work in the community can submit any future plans, and the city would consider it over it if it's help enhance the Old Town neighborhood and create a positive synergy in that spot.
Sure, we're always interested in looking at ideas. Recognize again, the city does not own that block.
Right.
It's owned by David Gold, so he would have a large part in any decision, major part in any decision.
One last question, that one. So if the project does not move on forward with the Block 33, then will the city set aside the fund and disperse it out onto to the whole perimeter of Old Town, or will it
Well, the money would have to be spent within the district, within the Old Town Chinatown district, and again, no decision has been made as to what projects it would go forward towards, but I would, yes, I mean, it stays in the district, obviously, and it could go for more of the other sorts of business development things that we've been working on, or another project, but no decision's been made.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Action item, Resolution 6901, approve Second Amendment to commercial lease of certain PDC leased premises. This is just lining up the lease for our storage space in the adjacent building with our the lease with this building.
I move approval. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Okay, on to the regular agenda, but actually that means that we're going to adjourn the Portland Development Commission. The meeting of Portland Development Commission is now adjourned. The Portland Development Commission will reconvene immediately after the meeting of the Commission's local Contract Review Board. The members of the Portland Development Commission will now meet as the Commission's local Contract Review Board to consider the adoption of revised local Contract Review Board administrative rules. Good morning, Linda.
Hello, I'm Linda Andrews, Professional Services Manager. Good morning. We bring the local Contract Review Board rules to the Commission every now and then for update. We're doing so today. I have a brief presentation, PowerPoint presentation. I will entertain questions at any point. David Ellett was my resource for updating these rules, and he can answer any legal questions if those come up. First, the framework, give you an idea of why we're here. The local Contract Review Board rules are set up under federal regulations, the state statutes, Oregon state statutes, and the Oregon Attorney General model rules. All of the public agencies use the same framework. They'll differ in the types of purchasing that they handle. The cities are much more verbose and thick because they handle a lot of materials that we don't purchase. All of us, all agencies, still will adhere to the Oregon revised state statutes, so we can't conflict with those. Thought I had the hang of this. Okay, why are we changing these? Why is this needed? The last update was May 26th last year. We have a few changes in the Oregon state statutes that govern public contracting. We're updating that area. We're providing clarity in some of the areas by rewording the provisions. We're making various changes to bring us up to date with best practices in the area. Some of the more substantive changes are the flexibility to use electronic procurement methods that are already in the statutes. We are limiting ourselves by not allowing that in our LCRB rules. So we need to adhere to whichever is more restrictive, our rules or the state statutes. So we're opening those up. We have inserted a new PDC conditionally responsible construction bidder list. This is to allow us to talk to past construction contractors who have had some performance issues. The ORS statutes allows us to call them non-responsible if they meet certain criteria. There's a list of criteria. So our new list says to the contractor, you have not satisfied everything on that list, but you have satisfied some of those areas. And prior to awarding a contract to you, if we place you on the list, we're going to talk to you about those areas that we feel are deficient. So this is a new area for us. We have a definition now in our LCRB rules for independent contractor. Sorry. We have established a protest process for procurements between $5,000 and $100,000. We did not have that in our prior rules. We had that for everything over $100,000. We have added to our list of items that are exempted from solicitation: food, conference sites, membership dues, and parking validations. Those items just have not lent themselves to a public solicitation.
Linda, do we have any information on the number of protests that we typically see annually? Any idea?
In construction, in general,
Yeah.
protests,
It's a small number.
very, very small.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember the last one we had.
Okay.
They're
Okay,
very,
that's
very
fine.
few. And we added sustainable procurement language to our LCRB rules. So that was my brief PowerPoint presentation. Any questions?
Well, thank you, Linda. Not the most exciting or controversial item to be in front of us for a while, but I just in particular was appreciative of the changes with regard to the responsible bidder and also the sustainability section that you didn't touch on. I mean, we want to talk about that a little bit as an addition to our requirements, the sustainability piece in particular.
Yes. I'm sorry, you had a question? You asked me to talk
Well,
about
just could you talk about that a little bit, that what the addition is with regard to the sustainability? I think it's page 21, actually. I could probably do it.
One of the things we're working on is actually a sustainable procurement policy, which is much more in detail than what we have in this section. We had about a paragraph in the previous section, and we have elaborated still more generally, because we are working on the sustainable procurement policy, which is a lot more in detail than this. So some of the things that we're putting in the policy is the recycled paper requirement. The chemical cleaning products, that's been controversial for some time now. The city has that. Solicitation documents, we have had proposals come in actually in bound books, and that's not at all sustainable. And we've added a 5% in our selection criteria, of 5 points for a sustainable proposal. So if they come in with a bound book, they do not get that 5 points. The price preference for recycled products, the environmental product service labels, landscape maintenance, that's been around for a while too, that we've wanted to address. In our public works contracts involving demolition, we actually do a very good job of that. We recycle a lot of the material from our demolitions, and we've been used as an example by Metro as how to write a specification to reuse demolition byproducts.
Great, thank you. I'm proud of this section, and I wanted to highlight it. So, Commissioner Dixon, you have any questions or comments?
If you could again just the The contractor who gets on the selection list, like you said, they're on it, but they do have an opportunity to work through their being on the bad list, essentially.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay, good.
The protest process is similar to the one for, in the LCRB rules already for contract award. They can protest being on the list, and I hear the protest and make a decision, and if they protest that decision, then it goes to the executive director.
Okay.
And that decision is then final. So we have options throughout the process. This is a new process, but the intent is to talk to the contractors before we have a contract that we've got out there on the street and a huge project we want to get in the ground. We don't want to have those conversations at that point with a low contractor, a low bidder,
Exactly.
and tell them that we have issues with them. It will delay the project, no doubt.
Absolutely, and that's really important that you said they know ahead of time. This isn't a surprise to anybody.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for adding the sustainability clause. What are we doing in terms of following the city's lead or having the city follow our lead? Do they have the same policies? Will we adopt those? Do we have to reinvent the policies twice?
We've actually gone out and looked at a lot of other agencies' policies, the cities included, and we have drafted a sustainable procurement policy that's fairly detailed, and it's being reviewed. It's going to be reviewed by our Operations Steering Committee soon, so we can see if we can get that in place. But we do have a network of contracting folks, and we do share that information. So when we do our LCRB rule updates, we do talk to the city, and we look at their local contracting review board rules, and we are looking at their sustainable procurement policy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Charles?
Yes, I just wanted to say appreciate the compliance-related effort, and that's kind of how I view this. We need to make sure we're compliant with regulations as they change, and also the changing times. And the only thing I would suggest, it sounds like we have it on a loose update schedule. I think we need to put it on a fixed schedule so that someone looks at it, and even if there are no changes, we report there are no changes rather than have time pass. I don't know how many times this has been reviewed in the last several years, but I don't think the statutes are going to change that much, but it's good to have it just as a structured process.
I think we look at it annually.
If there are changes, we look at it, staff looks at it annually.
Okay.
And if there are changes, we bring them to the board. Would you like it brought to the board annually?
I think just to say there are no changes, just so we know it's been looked at, because I don't think we're going to log it in our minds mentally to ask about it regularly.
We will do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
John, any questions or comments?
No questions, just I think good necessary changes and good explanation, and I appreciate the update on the responsible contractor in Honeywood. I think that's a good idea for us.
Okay. Thank you. So I would look for a motion to approve Resolution 6904, adopt revised local contract review board administrative rules.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, the meeting of the Commission's Local Contract Review Board is now adjourned, and the meeting of the Portland Development Commission is reconvened. Next item is also an action item. Authorize Posey fiscal year 2011-12 grant agreement in an amount not to exceed $200,000. Resolution 6902. Mr. Bowers.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioner, Executive Director. My name is Lou Bowers, and I manage the Central City Division for you. And to my left is Rob Bennett, who's the Executive Director of Posey, and he will be sharing this presentation with me. The action before you today is to authorize a grant agreement with the Portland, Oregon Sustainability Institute for $200,000 for the delivery of sustainably related eco-district activities. Specifically, there are ongoing technical support in four pilot areas: Portland State, South Waterfront, Lentz, and Gateway, with a significant focus on project development in Lloyd District in coordination with City and the district partners. You've seen this before, and you'll see this slide once again in Rob's presentation, but these are the pilot eco-districts, and you'll notice that they are also located in urban renewal districts, so we do have a close synergy there. This is part of a 3-year commitment that the PDC has made to helping POSI get up and running in conjunction with the city. We have made grants to POSI in the past of $742,000. That included some TIF and some general fund that was passed through by the city. And we're bringing it to you today because with this proposed grant, it would take the total of TIF over $500,000 and therefore over the executive director's limit. And we wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with that and approved of that. This is the specific budget, and it shows the breakdown, the allocation by urban renewal area. And as you can see, there's a significant commitment by the OCC area, and that is justified by the progress that's been made there with the Lloyd Sustainability District that has been created, and also the activity looking at district energy or various kinds of energy sources focused on the Rose Garden and the Lloyd area. And POSI will be serving as a consultant to us and has helped in the preparation of the RFQ and will assist in the evaluation and rollout of that project. At this point, I wanted to turn it over to Rob, and he can give you more detail about POSI's business plan and their ideas to go forward.
Thanks, Lou. Good morning, Chair Andrews and the commissioners. I'm going to do a brief presentation. Lou told me to be succinct, so I'll do my best to roll through and both provide a bit of an update and an overview of POSI generally, because I haven't been with you since last fall, and then spend a majority of the time talking a bit about the work in the eco-districts as it relates to this contract and grant agreement. So, as you may recall, we were founded by Mayor Adams in 2009 to identify and drive what we consider next-generation sustainability projects for the metro region. We're very much an organization in service to the city and the Portland Development Commission and the region. And given the size and scope of our organization, we take a networked approach to the work we do. We're a small organization, but the idea is to identify and then work with our partners on executing on what we think are incredibly important projects that have triple bottom line benefits. And much of the work to date has been embedded into the Economic Development Plan of PDC and into the city's Climate Action Plan. And most recently, some work that we've done in the region related to a roadmap for the region called the Climate Prosperity Green Print. We're intended to generate ideas and, again, implementation strategies for projects that have high impact and then link us to global best practices. We have 3 projects that we're currently involved in. The Green Print, which we helped author in partnership with PDC, the city, Metro, Nike, Greater Portland, Inc., Work Systems, others, to develop a regional economic development and climate action plan. In essence, to take the good work that PDC and the city have done, both in their climate action plan and economic development strategy, and regionalize it. We've been working with Lou and his team and the Oregon University system in the city on the Oregon Sustainability Center. Commissioner Dixon and I co-chaired a committee that helped shape the program of that center. Our efforts to date have not been on the real estate side, but on advocating and identifying what we think is a robust program, and with a heavy emphasis on making sure that the project is of value to the community and has good equity benefits. And then finally, EcoDistricts, which has really taken up a majority of our work as an organization and from a funding perspective to help develop this green neighborhood development strategy with the city and PDC over the last 2 years. Recently, and I'm joined today by Tom Oziba, our chair of our board, we've gone through a pretty rigorous strategic framework activities with the board and with our executive committee. And just to touch on sort of how we're shaping the organization going forward, we're really trying to organize ourselves in 3 areas. One, what we're calling, for lack of a better term at this point, Innovation Lab. This is where we generate the research and the ideas that ultimately lead to execution, and that's what we're calling the sandbox. And we've been working closely with PDC and the city on identifying project types that ultimately then get procured through the city and or other partners that ultimately we think are best served as joint ventures or public-private partnerships. And finally, we want to work with and help the city and the region export our good ideas to link to other organizations like the C40 and the Clinton Climate Initiative to make sure that Portland's reputation and the work that Greater Portland's doing on branding the region is amplified through the work that we're doing. So how do we do this? In the Innovation Lab, it's really about research and identifying practical application-based strategies around the areas of energy, water, waste, transportation, et cetera. Then we work with what we think are the most promising projects that have business cases that are robust enough to then accelerate and deploy those technologies. And of course, we're focusing within our 5 eco-districts to do that work. And then again, finally, we want to contribute to the promotion of Portland's traded sector and our global leadership in sustainability through the work we do. The outputs for this are in the form of new finance and policy and sort of technology strategies in the Innovation Lab, new pilot projects, and we're going to touch on a couple of those in the eco-districts. Then ultimately, this, the success, I think, is our traded sector, strategy being improved by shining a light on this work and helping put a finer point on how we're viewed out in the greater world as building green cities, as we like to say. We've got some simple outcomes and metrics around, infrastructure cost reductions, greenhouse gas reductions, and economic development as well. So for funding, we are in essence an animal of the city being founded by the mayor, and I was instructed from day one to diversify our funding as quickly as possible. And we're doing, I think, a reasonable job of that. Our first year, and we're on a calendar year as a nonprofit, over 90% of our funding came from the city. But it came through PDC contracts. Some of it, as Lou mentioned, was general fund, and the majority of it was working through the urban renewal work and eco-districts. Last year it was just slightly under 50%. This calendar year, it's roughly 35%, and we think it's going to be about 20 to 25% for the calendar year 2012, in which this budget spans both 11 and 12. We've leveraged a significant amount of resources for a small organization, a new organization. We've raised $70,000 in foundation dollars to date. We've actively got about $500,000 worth of very promising grant applications and partnerships out there. Portland State has been a partner of ours since the beginning. We are working with the Institute for Sustainable Solutions and Bob Costanza to formalize that relationship in the form of an MOU and additional funding. We've worked with other bureaus, including the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and we've earned over $200,000 in earned income. We also leverage a bunch of human capital as well. Because we're associated and we're located at PSU, we've had tremendous student and faculty research deployed on our eco-districts. We've had student groups. We've had faculty researchers doing a variety of research in each of the eco-districts. We've been able to work with, again, PDC and other partners to get contributions in the eco-districts from the community organizations that are there. In the case of Lloyd, they've put the local business communities put significant resources down to help fund for their local eco-district position. And we've also gotten over $80,000 to date of Bullet Foundation grant money to PSU for work. Again, we've got other future leverage in the form of relationships that we're building with foundations and local businesses and other local governments outside of Portland, including Hillsborough and Beaverton. I won't spend much time on this, but because you've seen this in the past, but this is how we organized the eco-districts work initially, by creating a framework, developing an organizational model and an assessment model to help execute a way of analyzing and baselining the performance in the neighborhoods that help inform what projects that are selected in each of the projects. And those could be projects that are more in the PDC realm of buildings and infrastructure, or software projects that are more in the community development and the sort of social dimensions of sustainability. Many of the projects that, say, BPS, the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, would execute on, or community groups would execute on. We've created a 5-step implementation process. We've been heavy on the first 3 phases to date, organizing the communities that have led to MOUs being signed in every one of those communities. And I can't emphasize how difficult that is to get, particularly in communities like Gateway and Lentz, which you have a tremendous amount of community interests in a very diverse and a very wide-ranging geography, to get the kind of, I think, synergies together and enthusiasm for EcoDistricts has been actually quite a surprise, a pleasant surprise through the process. We are undertaking with PDC an assessment in both Gateway and Lentz. We're going to start a deeper assessment in Lloyd and PSU this coming year with the resources from PDC. And we've done a fair amount of project feasibility. We've been emphasizing district energy in the 3 central city districts to date, which has led to the RFQ that PDC recently released to bring in a provider for the Rose Quarter. Ultimately, then, it's project development and on to monitoring. So this is intended to be a process that goes on long, and it will certainly go on longer than our 3-year contract with PDC. But we feel like we're doing a good job of building the sort of infrastructure and the sort of rigor around the EcoDistricts effort that ultimately it gets institutionalized by the city and PDC. That's the hope, that in this 3-year learning process and execution process, that there's going to be some real opportunities for ways for the city to institutionalize this work beyond the pilots into the future. Mentioned the 5 districts we've been working in, and I'll just mention that we're also working in Hillsborough and Beaverton at this point. So there's tremendous interest in the region for the EcoDistricts effort and the model that we've created to help cities and the local developers in neighborhoods. So very quickly, just a snapshot of the activities in each of the 5 districts. We've been, again, working primarily on this sort of outreach, execution, and governance work in each of the districts. In Lloyd, you probably know that they've hired Sarah Henneke to be their sustainability director. That's the first neighborhood-based sustainability director we've been able to come across in the U.S. So this is a big deal. And obviously, it provides some capacity for the BID and for the Lloyd EcoDistrict on their side to help drive the work going forward. We've gotten to the point where an RFQ has been issued for district energy, and as Lou mentioned, we've been working with the PDC and the city on that for some time. And we are now moving into more rigorous assessment. As Lou mentioned, most of our money is going to be, from this contract, would go to the Lloyd district. The thinking being is we've been, in essence, for the last 2 years, spreading the resources equally to each of the districts, doing quite good work. But if we're going to really make progress, we felt that, and this is work that came out of the board, this is work that came out of a retreat with PDC and city staff, that we should really emphasize one of the districts and go as hard and deep as we can to build as much momentum. We felt the Rose Quarter and the Lloyd District made the most sense given the mayor's and PDC's activities to date and the Veterans Memorial Coliseum work, et cetera. So the year ahead is really important because I think for EcoDistricts to be considered legitimate and viable and something of value, we need to get some projects on the ground, and we're looking at the district energy opportunity as a significant move in the right direction for, we hope, to start in the Rose Quarter, but then ultimately it would be something that can grow and service the rest of the district as buildings come online and as equipment and other buildings start to age. We are working again, to formalize through governance on the EcoDistricts Resource Council. And most importantly, and a majority of the resources this year are going to go towards an integrated district infrastructure plan for the district. And this is important because if you think about what we're doing in Portland, we've done very well on our stormwater management, and to a certain extent our transportation is world class. But we've never taken an integrated an approach to doing green neighborhood infrastructure planning and execution. So this is intended to work with all the major bureaus of the city, not only PDC, to execute on a strategy, to integrate the work of Metro because Metro runs waste, and to have a very targeted set of next steps as far as the kinds of projects that we want to see on the ground in this district. So going beyond just energy efficiency, working with PDC on the commercial energy efficiency work, a water strategy, a waste strategy, and an end-of-mile transportation strategy that would support some of the work that the Transportation Management Association has been doing for years. In the south of Market, now that PSU EcoDistrict has been renamed the South of Market EcoDistrict in the work that they've been doing, We will continue to work primarily on their governance. PSU is trying to use EcoDistricts as a way to have a new relationship with the adjacent property owners in the district and to encourage more sort of a continuity and sort of shared goals. So you'll see the prioritization of projects around retail and the Halpern blocks, Montgomery, Green Street. They're really trying to, I think, sort of use EcoDistricts to create a sort of a stronger kind of neighborhood-based approach to the projects that are undergoing. A couple of highlights. One is we're working with Vivek Chandis and the Institute for Sustainable Solutions to do a very rigorous assessment, database-rich assessment of and baselining of the district this year. And we will be trying to push forward a parking benefit district, something that we've helped shape and advocate before. This would just allow for additional parking revenue to be kept in the neighborhood for sustainable transportation projects. And based on the modeling to date, that would add about $300,000 a year to the district for those kinds of projects. In South Waterfront, it makes, in working with PDC, the next step that seemed most logical was to do, again, an integrated infrastructure plan for the North District as it tying into the light rail work and the early district energy analysis work that we conducted in which district energy is very promising. So to create an integrated district infrastructure strategy, to continue to work on the governance work with the neighborhood. There's 2,700 people living in the Central District, so linking the Central District's goals and aspirations with the North District, which is obviously owned by a small handful of property owners. And then something that we're hoping, the mayor and I met with the Clinton Foundation when we were in Sao Paulo for the C40 conference, is to advocate and hopefully become part of the Clinton Foundation's Carbon Positive program. They have one of 16 best-in-class, neighborhood-based projects globally that they've selected. And the project's about a year, and they're now very open with the mayor's urging and my pestering my old colleagues to bring at least one or two Portland projects into that portfolio of international projects. I think that would do two things. One, the program has very rigorous goals around reducing or eliminating carbon emissions in these districts. So it would create some rigor around the kind of work that we're already doing here in Portland to be carbon positive as a development. Two, it also gave us purchase internationally as part of a very small group of best-in-class development projects. So that work is pending. There's no decisions yet. It's just an opportunity for us to link EcoDistricts into a global partnership with Clinton Foundation. Out in the outer two eco-districts, again, we spend a lot of time on governance and engagement, given the sort of complexities and the size of the districts. We are going to focus our resources on looking at sustainable funding for the districts, and I think this is an opportunity to link up with the neighborhood economic and John's work and the Main Streets work and some of the work that BPS is doing around deploying resources at the neighborhood level to see if there's a way to get some level of professional staff in these neighborhoods to guide the work going forward. The neighborhood is really working on a variety of very diverse projects, from Gateway Green to create a 40-acre park in the between the freeway lands, which is moving forward, district waste strategy with Adventist, an urban agriculture strategy, and then looking to partner with Clean Energy Works Oregon on a retrofit strategy. In Foster Green, we have the FLIP, the Foster Lentz Integration Partnership, which is a strategic investment strategy for infrastructure in that region. We're helping shape that and help on some of the community outreach. In Gateway, I sort of mentioned both. The projects in Gateway Green, again, funding models for self-governance. A lot of the same sort of dynamics and the same priorities exist in both of those outer districts. And I think I finished just with some of the, just to sort of reinforce our work and what we're trying to do to leverage our investments that PDC and the city have made in us. We put on an EcoDistrict Summit, and some of you have attended that. We're going to have our third annual this year, but really it's our second annual. The first one was a very modest invite-only affair. We've raised over $100,000 already in sponsorship for this event. We and with global and local partners. We're going to have a delegation, including the Vice Mayor from Stockholm, join us. We've got a partnership with the German Marshall Fund to bring over some projects from Europe. We're going to have representatives from Japan and Asia, other parts of Asia and Mexico join us. So this is becoming, I think, what we had aspirations for all along, which is to be a significant event for the region to both highlight the work that we do, but also link ourselves up to the best practices globally. So we're thrilled that summit has, in just 2 years, has grown in stature, and we're continuing to work hard to make it a useful event that brings people doing this work to Portland once a year. We've got these regional pilots both in Amber Glen and Beaverton Central City that we're working with those cities, so we are expanding EcoDistricts. We're working with PDC, the city, Business Oregon, and Greater Portland on an export brand strategy that we're hoping to roll out. We will roll out with the governor and Patrick's trip to Asia. What the brand that we're calling is We Build Green Cities, and this was inspired on some of our travels. Lou and I were traveled to Northern Europe and Sweden, where they've done a very good job of marketing in Sweden them as green city builders and combining the sort of force of the business community and the public policy makers into something that is sort of more than the sum of a variety of parts. It's sort of PDX Lounge, for those of us who are involved in PDX Lounge, sort of version 2. And it will include a web-based portal, a database of companies that work here, a film that Wyden and Kennedy is putting together, all of these tools to be used for the kind of delegation visits abroad or to conferences like Green Build. We're developing a North American EcoDistricts pilot. We had a funder in town early this week and a leadership academy to be able to both train other cities but also to extend EcoDistricts into other cities in North America and extend our brand and our companies who we would drag into that process to help be faculty and ultimately, we hope, procure contracts with other cities. And then finally, an emerging partnership with MIT and Carl Seidel on developing what they're calling a green infrastructure investment center and working with us on some of the financing opportunities and sort of financing tools that could be deployed at the district level for things like district energy and green utilities, et cetera. So that's some of the work that's undergoing, and let me just finish it by thanking you all for the support that PDC and PDC staff and Patrick have given us in the past, and we look forward to working with you this year if the contract goes forward and reporting out our progress next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Very, very nice presentation. It was great to get an update, and it's exciting to see the organization evolve and move from concept to action to real projects. I wanted to thank both of you for working on the Sustainability Center project, and we're not going to give you an update today, but we will tell you that we haven't given up. And in fact, we're making, I think, really good progress, and I'm very hopeful that project will happen. We'll see. Could you give us just a quick update as to where we are with that RFQ in the Lloyd District?
The RFQ has been issued. There was a meeting of interested parties, and we had about 25 people attend. And I'm trying to remember when it closes. I have to get back to you. I think it closes very soon. It may be early in September, the first week in September, I believe. And then we'll be sorting through the responses. I'll get you a specific date, Chair.
That'll be the first real EcoDistrict project.
That'll be definitely take us to a different level of implementation. Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you. Charles, anything?
Sure. Well, thanks, Rob and Lou. Rob, particularly for the focus. It's nice to see this translate into the community. And once we start and complete the Lloyd project, I assume this will spread, and it will just be our way of living and thinking. It won't be something that's a specific initiative. It'll be just how we operate. One question I would have if I was the general public hearing this and looking at this, it sounds like it's perpetual investment. Is there a dollar amount that we can say, well, we invested in Lloyd we've got all the ecosystem infrastructure and everything we need in place to make this a continuing eco-district. How would you respond to that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Is there, if we looked at this investment as an investment similar to one we would make in a company and say this is a project, this is how much it takes in a perfect world to complete this project, is there such a thing with regard to looking at the eco-districts?
I think it's difficult to know. I mean, I think if you, I think the way that we look at it is the resources that and the sort of investment that PDC has made, you know, obviously needs to translate into projects. And if you take the district energy project as an example, what we're hoping was with fairly modest investments that we help to develop a business case and work with PDC and the procurement process, you know, that's upwards of a, well, depending on scale, a $15 to $45 million investment of private capital, we hope private capital almost exclusively, to develop just one component part. Another project we've been working on, although sort of more quietly, is bike sharing for the central city, and obviously that would affect the 3 eco-districts in the central city. That's also trying to leverage a lot of private investment in the form of sort of sponsoring the bike sharing program. So I think, you know, as it relates to sort of the investments that PDC and the city makes on eco-districts, a lot of it to date is obviously to build the sort of IP or the, you know, the sort of framework in which the city sort of moves out. You know, and the city will ultimately be able to, through its own powers and investment vehicles, to determine how to, you know, sort of size up investments sort of one at a time as they come through based on a business case. The city also has the power to obviously leverage resources through policy making, you know, both incentives and or sort of requirements that that generate sort of better sustainability outcomes. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
Yes, that gives me some good perspective. What are we doing, or how are we? We're talking big dollars as far as the ultimate private investment to get us where we think we need to be or where we would like to go with regard to the eco-district. How are we translating or making that known to those parties that we're identifying as the private parties that will be making the significant investments?
I think, you know, one reason we wanted to focus on Lloyd and take an approach, in essence, we want to take with Lloyd a similar approach that I think has been, you know, working with the Oregon Sustainability Center. In essence, what we did with OSC was to develop a spec for the most advanced commercial building on the planet and then invite companies in to participate. In contrast to saying, hey, you know, we want to do an eco-district, what do you guys got for us? And it becomes a very difficult conversation to have with companies. By saying, in the case of Lloyd, we want to be as highly efficient towards carbon neutrality in this district, and we want to start with the Rose Quarter node. Help us get there. We kind of know what we need. We're looking at a thermal energy system, and then invite companies like the Corixes and the Veolias and the McKinstries of the world to come in and help participate in a public-private partnership with the city. That's why, you know, this year we want to focus on Lloyd on developing the rest of that spec out, in essence. So what is it that we want in waste energy, waste water, transportation, so we can, in essence, invite companies in this sandbox environment and create a much more of a, you know, a partnership, a business joint venture or public-private partnership sort of from the get-go, but with being very clear what the district and what the city wants going into that. I think that's been very useful, I think, in sort of organizing the kind of companies on OSC that we've tried to attract, because we knew very specifically, you know, we need control systems, we need photovoltaics, we need water management systems. We knew what we needed to meet the goals, and that helps, I think, line up with the clean tech strategy that PDC has. So I think that's the sort of the smart thinking from my perspective on eco-districts. That's a particular focus on the business development and the sort of economic development and sort of clean tech alignment. There's also a lot of just human capital and community development that happens. So, you know, for instance, Solarize that started in Southeast Portland, that was a buyers club, you know, organized by the neighborhood association in essence, and it's become so successful that you don't want to preclude those kinds of community innovations that are ground up from the, you know, from the local community and figuring out how they get engaged in it as well. So it's not just about sort of inviting large companies in, but it's also trying to unleash some of the creative energies of the community itself.
And oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
I just wanted to ask, I think you've asked a very important question, and although the eco-district is a pretty powerful concept, it's not really designed to be a straitjacket or a one-size-fits-all. So we've talked about the 5 pilot eco-districts, and that's going to look very different in Foster Green than it's going to look in South Waterfront. So we are, in fact, trying to experiment on what are the critical mass of systems that then translate into the public and private investment. So I'm hopeful in 2 or 3 years we'll be able to come back to you and show you here are 3 or 4 models of how the systems can interact at various levels of investment, so that we'll have more information on that. But that is ultimately where we want to get.
Well, and you touched on my last question. Is there the circumstance developing that if I'm in one of those other areas, would I expect to see a similar type of investment once you go through the Lloyd district, where it's going to be dependent on what's going on in each area, so it'll scale up and down?
Very much. It was we consciously chose a variety, some new construction in South Waterfront, some existing in terms of Lloyd commercial, some more neighborhood residential, to test how the concept would apply in different geographies. So we think the theory's the same, but it may be different pilots that go there, maybe different levels of investment. And it also has to do, of course, with the interest of the participants. Where's their energy and what do they want to work on? It's not, we're bringing you these 5 things, you must accept them. It's, where's the energy? And how do we tap in that energy so that it works for that neighborhood? So there's a strong community organizing element or community development element that Rob's talked on.
Okay, well, that's all I have. Thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Commissioner Strauss?
Well, I'm big on eco-districts. I think it's a great opportunity for the city of Portland to demonstrate national, international leadership. I also agree with your concept of trying to narrow it down to one of the eco-districts and have a focus on that. I think the funds are limited, and we need to figure out how to stretch them as much as possible. I'm curious why you chose the Lloyd district to start the process and why you didn't choose Portland State University. I think for the eco-district to be successful, you need really a density of people and buildings so that the waste from one building becomes the driver for another building. And there's a lot of infrastructure up at Portland State University. You got a university that wants to, obviously they've given to you financially. I think they have a group that's organized to propel a eco-district in their location. So I'm curious, what do you see as the advantages of starting off in the Lloyd district, and how is that actually, how are you going to actually, take that district system and connect it to other buildings? The distances seem so significant that it's just not going to be cost effective. Well, we talked internally with city and PDC staff about which is the right district to prioritize, and some of that decision obviously was on where is sort of some of the real estate and some of the investment happening. Some of it's also where is the district in its sort of evolution as an eco-district. And Mark Gregory and his team at PSU, who's helping lead it, they're still in what he sort of described as sort of discovery phase with some of the private property owners. So he's, I think as someone in Lloyd mentioned, with the sort of crawl, was a crawl, walk, run sort of approach to eco-districts, and some are wanting to crawl a little more than sort of walk and run. And I think in PSU they're taking a slower approach as they're trying to negotiate with some of the adjacent property owners. That said, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of energy there. There's a lot of faculty involvement. There's a lot of sort of horsepower, if you will, to sort of leverage. But we felt with the Rose Quarter and the Veterans Memorial Coliseum and some of the development, and the fact that the city owns the land there, that was an opportunity to be a bit more focused and ultimately creative in bringing the city's sort of power to bear on that project. I will mention as far as the district energy and expandability, yeah, we're looking at a phase 1 that's fairly, the locus is the Rose Quarter and any adjacent new construction that happens in the next couple of years, with the exception of the Oregon Convention Center, because some of their early phase equipment is starting to fail, and they're very interested. So part of I think the opportunity, again, working with the city and the agencies like BES, is there's aspirations for Holiday Street to be re-envisioned as a green street. Well, that's the appropriate time to think about that as a trunk line that can then serve the rest of the district, even if you don't have the customers ready to go as far down, say, as Doubletree and Ashforth Pacific properties and ultimately the mall. That's where a joint venture between the city and a private utility company becomes really important.
And, you know, if you think about 5th and 6th being rebuilt, you know, Veolia, if we knew at the time, and Veolia hadn't purchased the brewery blocks, but that would have been the appropriate time to have worked with them to develop a district cooling loop down the service of majority of the Central City Class A buildings, but we just hadn't organized. So in Lloyd, we've got that opportunity to think about some of the infrastructure planning the city's already got cooking with this private utility company that ultimately it only works if there's a business case on that first phase, and then the business case improves as you hook into other adjacent properties. So I think there's a real opportunity there because of the infrastructure planning, because of the city-owned land, because there is some action and activity happening in the Rose Quarter. It's not without risk, obviously, but we thought that was the appropriate place to start.
Thank you. Commissioner Dixon.
Well, thank you, Rob. Excellent presentation, and obviously you guys have done a lot of really great work. Lou had promised that we would hear a lot of what you did, and it's very impressive in a short amount of time, especially with the EcoDistrict summits sounding like they're a really big success to the city. And having co-chaired with you on the Oregon Sustainability Center, I know how passionate and dedicated you are to sustainability in this city. And again, it's a very important mission of ours here. But I would agree with Commissioner Strauss in terms of the Portland State University really being able, I feel like they could really bring this project and what you guys are doing to a higher level that allows you to expand more than maybe what we're doing right now, and just hoping that they start running a little more, because I think with a lot of the projects that we have coming up, it would be such a benefit to them, to the city, and that's what we're all looking for. So continue with your good work ahead.
Commissioner Wallace.
I'll say to everybody the echo of just thank Lou and Rob for the good presentation and my fellow commissioners for good questions. Thank you.
Okay, I would look for a motion to approve Resolution 6902, authorize Portland, Oregon Sustainability Institute fiscal year 2011 grant agreement in the amount not to exceed $200,000.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion?
There's a sustainability guy.
All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. You're excused.
Thanks, sir. See you, sir. Take care. Take care. Yeah, we need to do that.
See you tonight. The last item on today's agenda is an action item, Resolution 6903, authorize architectural and engineering contract for Veterans Memorial Coliseum renovation not to exceed $2,760,000. Mr. Bowers is still with us, and good morning, Kevin.
Morning.
I guess I will tee this up a little bit and say that I had the opportunity to lead the presentation at City Council last week, where we were given authorization to change the OCC agreement to provide that we can spend TIF funds on a publicly owned building. And as part of that, City Council was updated in terms of our progress on this process, and was updated in terms of the action that is going to happen today. And I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but I will point out, which I didn't at City Council, that although we are authorizing $2.6 million, that includes a fairly large contingency because we're a long way from having a real project, and that is the funding that will take us through construction, actually to get to the next phase, which is a high level of confidence in terms of the pricing and the timing in terms of some of the improvements. We're more in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. So with that, gentlemen.
Chair, Commissioners, Executive Director, again, my name is Lou Bowers, Central City Division, and with me is Kevin Brake, who's the project manager for the Rose Quarter and the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And the chair is quite accurate. We'll be touching on that topic in the presentation to re-emphasize it. I just wanted to refresh your memories and give you a little context for this action, as the city and PDC have been working for several years to develop a revitalization plan for the Rose Quarter. We've gone through different scenarios of what might be feasible. In September of 2009, the Veterans Memorial Coliseum was placed on the National Register of Historic Places, and that gave it a level of protection. As a result of that, the mayor and the PDC conducted a fairly extensive outreach and a winnowing process, soliciting ideas from the developers and the community of what could be alternative uses for Veterans Memorial Coliseum. After winnowing those through and doing some feasibility testing, it was decided that maintaining the facility as an enhanced spectator venue was the most cost-effective option that would also maintain the historic status. So the City Council did make a decision to maintain and enhance the structure as opposed to any kind of demolition or any other ideas that had been considered earlier. Then based on that, as the chair noted, we have gone ahead and done a significant pre-development work on the Veterans Memorial Coliseum in coordination with our partners, the Trailblazers and the Winterhawks. And recently, in August, the City Council and you and the board authorized the 19th Amendment, which makes the Veterans Memorial Coliseum an eligible project of the Oregon Convention Center URA. So that brings us to this point where we are now taking the next step in implementation, which is contracting, doing a competitive solicitation for the A&E work, schematic, and the various phases Kevin will define, which will give us better information about that project. So specifically, we are authorizing architectural and engineering contract for an amount not to exceed $2,760,000 for the VMC renovation. This is the solicitation is out, the proposals have been received, and they are being evaluated right now, and we anticipate that a recommendation will be made in the next several weeks, but this action delegates to the executive director the authority to make the final selection based on the competitive criteria. And we're asking you to do this because the project has a very tight implementation timeline, and if we were to wait for your next meeting, there could be 3 to 4 weeks delay in starting, and that could be important. As you'll see, the timeline has to do with particular windows of construction. So this actually would be to delegate to the executive director the final decision. Kevin will now give you some more details on the project.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Brake, Chair, Commissioners, Executive Director Patrick. The design contract we're contemplating here is actually starting at schematic design. We have completed conceptual design, which was really a very in-depth due diligence exercise that allowed us to arrive at a project that is very well scoped going into the RFP process. The contract is going to be in stages, starting with schematic design, moving into design development, moving into construction documentation, and ultimately construction administration. As we proceed, we're going to have the ability to re-scope the design contract based on the actual scope of the project. We anticipate that the contract after schematic design will reduce in scope. The total anticipated cost, as Lou noted, is $2.3 million for the design contract, and there's an additional 20% contingency on top of the base contract amount, with the not to exceed contract amount to be $2,760,000. PDC, the Office of Management and Finance, the Mayor's Office, and representatives from Portland Arena Management and the Portland Winterhawks have been engaged in conceptual design since April of this year. At the end of the conceptual design phase, the project scope was estimated at $52 million. Concept design resulted in a deeper understanding of the building condition and really got us to a higher level of understanding on the project. The decision has been made to bring this full scope project through schematic design in order to get a higher confidence on cost estimates, as well as to determine which of the elements are linked, meaning the renovation elements, and which can be completed at a later date. The cost for the schematic design phase is approximately $500,000. Based on the prioritization of improvements and the resources available, it is anticipated that the scope will reduce significantly at the end of schematic design. So we're going to write the contract in such a way that we're going to actually do a time and materials contract from the end of schematic design all the way through based on an actual scope of project. So it's likely that the design fees will reduce at that point. The redevelopment agreement, which is currently being negotiated with the Office of Management and Finance, PAM, the Winterhawks, and PDC, is anticipated to come to this board in the first quarter of 2012. That's really going to outline the public and private investment in the project and all of the relationships, roles, and responsibilities moving forward. So you're going to have another chance to look at this. In response to the outcomes of the disparity study, PDC has endeavored to integrate a higher level of minority women emerging small business firm utilization for design, the area that was identified as having the lowest utilization rate in the PDC contracts historically. Quickly, the Coliseum actually receives about 500,000 visitors a year, so it's fairly well utilized at this point, but it's been identified that it does sit unused a large percentage of the time as well. We have looked at, in scoping the conceptual design, a range of improvements that are really in three distinct areas. The first being the capital repair and improvements. Those are all things related to the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, any structural improvements, as well as code, fire, life safety, and American for Disability Act improvements to upgrade to the 2010 code. The second area is operational enhancements, and these are really the things that are additive to the building. They're going to make the fan experience a different experience and a better one at that. The hope is that there is a return on investment linked to the operational enhancements, and I'll talk a little bit more about private investment in those components in a minute. Enhanced community uses, and I'll talk a bit more about the Memorial Gardens renovation, are really about bringing additional public use to the building, upgrading the Memorial Gardens, which are the lower level plazas, and contemplating some East Plaza improvements. As was stated before, the selected architectural engineering team is anticipated to work closely with the successful proposer on the shared thermal energy system. So what we're seeing is an opportunity to have an iterative design conversation about the possibility of district energy as well as the mechanical electrical needs within the Memorial Coliseum. There may be an opportunity to realize some efficiencies in the capital improvements as we move forward with those negotiations. So we are in active negotiations with the Portland Winterhawks. They have expressed repeatedly an interest to invest $10 million into the project, but these investments, they have stated, need to be linked to things that have a return on investment over time. There are negotiations currently underway between Portland Arena Management and Portland Winterhawks to contemplate lease amendments to recognize this investment, and we will bring more information to you in the context of the redevelopment agreement in the first quarter of 2012. And again, the private partner investment would be focused primarily on the operational enhancements, so the things that are really additive to the facility. The Veterans Memorial Garden Enhancement Project, as we're referring to it, is looking at the two lower level plazas that are on either side of the entrance to the Coliseum. We have engaged the Veterans Focus Group from the beginning of the Rose Quarter planning process to get further clarity on the value of the memorials, what they mean, how can they be enhanced, how can they be changed, and how can we enhance them in a way that really addresses our current veteran situation. We have made good progress on that. We are preparing a concept plan that will be incorporated into the larger architectural engineering contract, and we are looking at proceeding with implementing the enhancement of the Memorial Gardens in partnership with the Regional Arts and Culture Council on the same schedule as implementation of the construction contract. And I'm not going to read it, but this is the original dedication of the building, and you'll see that it is dedicated to the advancement of cultural opportunities and the community in the memory of veterans. It is very much still a valid dedication, and we're looking at that as we proceed with the project. So next steps for you, we are looking at having a final AE contract awarded and signed by September 16th at the latest. I anticipate it's going to happen sooner than that. And then next for you all to consider is the redevelopment agreement, which is really the formal development agreement that will outline all of the private and public partners' roles moving forward. And at that, I think we're open for questions.
Great, thank you. You know, the discussion of the future of the Memorial Coliseum and that location has been publicly debated for something like 16 years. in a very public process with a very large committee of over a year, the mayor took a look at, I think there were over 100 proposals for other uses. So we looked at every other opportunity, and this is the one that seems to make the most sense. It does make the most sense. From a timing standpoint, it is very important that we move forward. We want to actually start construction in the spring of next year in terms of items that could be done while the Coliseum is still in use. The plan would be actually to close the Coliseum from June to about mid-September, and obviously that has to be planned for in advance because they're holding a block of events out. It's been a very, very cooperative process to date with the Winterhawks and Portland Arena Management. The current scope was actually a result of about 9 months of discussion between OMF, the PAM, the Winterhawks. We brought in other community users. For example, the Oregon Sports Authority had a chance to take a look and comment. And so we have a really pretty good idea of what the potentials are and what needs to be done. I don't expect the project to get bigger or change much, but we have very low confidence numbers at this point. But there's a 25% contingency within the construction budget, and before we can ask anybody to move forward on the project, we have to have a much better idea of what the costs are going to be. I would point out, although timing was critical and it would have been relatively easy to move forward with the existing contract in terms of the architect and engineering staff, we actually felt that this is such a big contract, it's such a visible contract, and our MWESB program needs a boost. We really wanted an opportunity for others to get involved, and that is a good part of the evaluation. So hopefully, with the passage of this, we'll take another step towards a big decision. I'd also point out that we tend to focus on these things as one project at a time, but this decision actually has a major effect on the neighborhood and development in the neighborhood. We've long looked forward to some development in the Rose Quarter and of course, Convention Center District, which is next door. And when you have a question mark around a facility that's this big and this important to the neighborhood, it's kind of hard to make a decision to move forward with any other type of development. So this decision and this process actually is bringing clarity to folks, and I think will stimulate the kind of investment and the kind of projects that we would like to see. Charles? Sure.
Well, thanks for the presentation. I just have a couple of questions. First of all, I will reiterate Chair Andrews' comments. I'm very pleased to hear us focusing up front on participation among minorities, women, and emerging small businesses, and that's something we would expect to carry throughout the development of the Rose Quarter. As far as what we're being asked to approve today, the $2.76 million, I understand we only think we're going to spend $500 initially on this study. So the question becomes, does something come to us later? Does that $2.76 million cover everything that needs to be done to get to the point of firming up, I guess, a development agreement?
The 2.76 actually takes you all the way through construction, so that will enable you to proceed at that point. There will be periodic check-ins, and Kevin mentioned the next one early next year where you will be approving the development agreement. That would be the trigger to then take the next stage of the design contract as well.
So that's all the design.
It will be worked in it will be implemented in phases, although it has been bid as one long piece so that we can continue with the architect throughout for efficiency's purposes.
Okay. And once again, from the public's perspective, if I'm looking at the history of the Rose Quarter and the Memorial Coliseum and I see the PDC Commission approving $2.76 million, is there any way we can spend $2.76 million and not have something happen?
No. To spend that amount, you would have actually completed through the renovation of the Veterans Memorial Coliseum.
Okay.
That amount takes you a completed project.
And I think it's very important that
for an A&E perspective.
Everyone understands that. The $500,000 plus or minus is a required investment to get to a point where we can have the parties involved negotiate something and take some firm positions, and then the remainder is going to be spent as we get through the construction of whatever is agreed upon.
That's correct. 500 basically complete schematic design that gets you a higher confidence number on the costs.
Okay.
That combined with the resources will be the concrete business plan that will then come back to you in the development agreement as to what are we going to proceed in what phases, and we will then scope the remainder of the A&E contract to those specific improvements that you approve.
Okay. And as, once again, Chair Andrews indicated, we're looking, I don't know if the numbers have changed at this point, but we have budgeted about $21.4 million for this particular activity with regard to the revitalization of Memorial Coliseum through, I believe, 2014.
Actually, that's changed. We had proposed that as part of our budget to City Council, and it did not include the 30% set aside.
Okay.
And an agreement has been made that the traditional set aside will take place, which in that district is actually 26%.
Okay. So it'll be less than a 21.
In the current budget, which is preliminary, I've seen it. It's more like $17 million.
Okay. 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 And once again, this is the first step. So if we're going to make that significant investment, we need to take the first step, and I think that's what we're talking about today. And timing is critical because of the seasons and the availability of the facility for development and construction. That's all I have.
Dixon?
I actually had a really similar question, and it was about the first phase of $500,000. Will be very close to what. With that first phase, we would have a better idea of what the cost would be for the building, and then have a stronger commitment from the partners who need to make that commitment in order to get this thing rolling. And then I also wanted you to highlight again, this is one of my questions, is how is the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, besides the name change and some of the added upgrades that we're doing, really going to be more of a public benefit in terms of the building and what it offers today versus when and if it's renovated in the future? So some of the public benefits, again, to the renovation of the building would be nice to hear.
The renovation really is it's a 50-year-old building, and the systems are generally original to the building. So it really isn't performing in a way that is adequate. So bringing the building up to current standards, including ADA accessibility for disabilities and fire life safety, are sort of the public requirement in order to make sure that our gathering facility is up to the highest public possible standard. The renovation of the lower level meeting rooms is an example of public benefit that will result. They're pretty downtrodden at the moment and not very desirable to use, but there's thousands of square feet of meeting rooms in the lower level that through this renovation will be upgraded, made into more multifunctional space with more modern amenities, and really sort of re-advertised as being open to the public for usage. So it's really about programming rather than physical improvements, because the building serves a pretty high utilization rate for the community for graduations, wrestling, things that are community.
And all those will still continue to take place.
Correct, and we hope to bring more community groups to the building. So through the process that the chair outlined, we have several youth arts groups, music and theater groups that are interested in using space for rehearsal periodically. We're re-engaging those groups that came through the public process to sort of bring them forward with the renovation of the building as potential users. So it's more about future programming in a renovated facility than additive elements. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that seems to have a lot of support is the Winterhawks hockey team with a new upgraded ice floor and chiller, because the floor's about to fail, will have a strong interest in running a public skating program in the building, so bringing a lot more people into the building. That's one example of some of the additional community uses.
Right, because I mean, I think that, again, if we're putting in such a large investment in the city, we want it to benefit our public in the best manner that it can, and getting as many people into that district will obviously help with further investment, as Chair Andrews said.
We see this as a catalyst for the district.
Okay.
bringing additional daytime usage to the building when it's often not used.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, we tend to focus on sort of the athletic events that go on there, but there are actually a lot of other types of events, high school graduations, for example, big meetings, of course, music and those sorts of things. So it will continue to be a community use. Commissioner Mullis?
Well, again, I'll try and spare everybody the echo, but I appreciate very much Chair Andrews' comments. I think it laid out very clearly the process that we've been through and where we're headed. And then Commissioner Wilhoit and Dixon focused it even more. So I think it's the right step to do at the right time and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So I would look for a motion to approve Resolution 6903.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. And with that, there is no further business before the board, and we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, John.
Yep, thank you. You're welcome.